He cried before the judge and called me cruel, but he didn't know the footage was about to destroy his lies. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. My name is Leora Hayes, and I was a 32-year-old partner in a small family-run real estate firm. I loved my job, trusted my colleagues, and thought I had everything under control. But one person betrayed me in the worst way. His name was Gideon Trent, my business partner, someone I considered like family. Everything started to fall apart when small discrepancies appeared in our accounts. At first, I thought it was a simple mistake. But then I found emails and bank statements hidden in his office. Gideon had been embezzling money for months, and somehow, everyone thought I was the one responsible. The people I trusted most turned their backs on me. Friends, coworkers, even family started questioning me. I felt trapped, angry, and alone. How could someone I trusted so deeply ruin everything I worked for? My reputation, my career, my life, it all seemed to collapse in a single moment. But I refused to give up. I collected proof, stayed quiet, and prepared for the day the truth would come out. I had secretly recorded everything: Gideon's lies, his manipulations, the moment he tried to cover his tracks. I knew that when the right time came, the footage would speak louder than his words. I just had to wait. One evening, while going through old files in the office, I stumbled upon a folder Gideon thought I would never see. Inside were documents, spreadsheets, and receipts showing exactly how he had siphoned money over months. My heart sank. Every late-night conversation, every plan we made together, every promise he swore, it felt like a lie. I remembered the countless times I confided in him, trusted him, and even celebrated small victories together. I had considered him like a brother, someone who would always have my back. And yet, here he was, betraying me in the most calculated way possible. Then the bombshell came. Gideon filed a lawsuit against me, claiming I had mismanaged the company's finances. He painted me as careless, reckless, and untrustworthy. The people I thought would stand by me now whispered doubts, and I felt the walls closing in. Everything I had built, every sacrifice I had made, was now at risk. My career, my home, and even my future in the business hung by a thread. The betrayal cut deeper than I expected because it wasn't just about money, it was about trust, loyalty, and the illusion of safety. I couldn't believe that someone I had considered family could turn against me so openly. I felt a mix of anger, sadness, and disbelief. The stakes had never been higher, and I realized that surviving this would take more than just words. I needed proof, a plan, and the strength to fight back. For the first time, I understood that betrayal could destroy everything if you let it. But I wasn't ready to let it win. I felt cornered, like the walls of my life were closing in. No one seemed willing to listen, and I worried that even my closest allies would doubt me. I reached out to a small, independent legal team, experts used to handling cases that bigger firms ignored. Their cautious questions made me nervous, but at least someone was taking my side seriously. While they worked on preparing my defense, I knew I had to gather my own proof. I started recording Gideon's calls without him knowing. Hearing him speak, admitting to what he had done, made my stomach twist. Each confession was a punch to the chest, but also a lifeline. It was evidence I could finally hold in my hands. Even with proof, the nights were unbearable. Anger and heartbreak collided inside me. I couldn't shake the loneliness, the feeling that I was navigating a storm completely by myself. There were moments when despair whispered that maybe it was all hopeless, but I refused to surrender. I replayed the recordings again and again, imagining the day they could be presented, when the truth would finally surface. The thought sent chills down my spine. I knew that if this evidence reached the courtroom, everything could turn in my favor. Every sleepless night, every quiet moment of planning, was building toward that moment. Despite the uncertainty and fear, a spark of hope began to grow. For the first time since this nightmare started, I felt a sense of purpose. Gideon thought he had me trapped, but I was quietly preparing for the day I would prove him wrong. The tables were about to turn, and nothing could stop what was coming. I spent hours every night surrounded by stacks of papers, receipts, and spreadsheets, trying to piece together the puzzle Gideon had created. Every number, every transaction, felt like a thread I had to follow to uncover the bigger truth. It was exhausting, but I couldn't stop. Every detail mattered. As I dug deeper, I discovered something that made my blood run cold. Gideon had bribed auditors to overlook discrepancies, covering his tracks with meticulous care. The betrayal wasn't just about money anymore, it was about deception on a scale I hadn't imagined. The more I found, the more I realized how clever and dangerous he really was. One evening, Joss Weller, my oldest friend, stopped by unannounced. He looked at the piles of documents and frowned. "Leora, you need to be careful. Gideon isn't just dishonest, he's dangerous. He won't hesitate to hurt anyone who stands in his way." His warning lingered in my mind. I appreciated the concern, but it also made me question everything. As I stared at the evidence, I felt a storm of conflicting emotions. Anger, fear, and disbelief swirled inside me, but so did doubt. Was this fight worth it? Could I truly take him down without destroying myself in the process? For the first time, I hesitated, wondering if revenge would bring closure, or just more pain. Yet, deep down, I knew I couldn't back down. I had come too far to surrender now. Every discovery, every shocking revelation, pushed me closer to a decision I couldn't avoid. The truth was waiting, and I had to be ready to face it, even if it meant risking everything I had left. The courtroom was colder than I expected, filled with murmurs and curious eyes. Gideon walked in confidently, wearing a polished suit and a practiced smile. Before anyone could speak, he began telling his version, casting himself as the injured party and portraying me as controlling and manipulative. My stomach twisted, but I forced myself to remain calm. The judge's expression was cautious, unreadable, and that made my heart race. Every word I wanted to say seemed to stick in my throat. I felt the weight of the room pressing down on me, friends, strangers, and colleagues watching, silently judging. I had to keep my composure, even as my emotions surged. Then, just as I was preparing to speak, a court officer handed the judge an envelope with no name. Everyone turned toward it, curiosity sparking in their eyes. My pulse jumped. I had no idea who sent it, but I could sense its importance immediately. The judge opened it slowly, scanning the contents, and my hope began to rise. Inside were documents and recordings that no one could ignore, proof of everything Gideon had done. My heart pounded as I realized that this anonymous evidence might finally change the course of the hearing. For the first time, I felt the possibility of vindication, though I didn't know what would happen next. The courtroom held its collective breath. I gripped the edge of the table, waiting, knowing that the next few moments could decide everything. The tension was unbearable, but a small spark of relief ignited inside me. Gideon's confident facade might finally be about to crumble, and I could hardly believe that the truth was finally stepping into the light. A few days after the court hearing, I received an unexpected package at my office. Inside was a USB drive labeled only with a single word, truth. My hands shook as I plugged it into my laptop, unsure what I would find but hoping it would finally give me the edge I needed. The footage that appeared on the screen made my jaw drop. There was Gideon, sneaking into the company's accounts late at night, moving money into secret accounts, and giving sharp, threatening orders to terrified staff. Every gesture, every word, was damning. I couldn't believe the proof was finally in my hands. I sat there for what felt like hours, watching every frame repeatedly. This wasn't just evidence, it was a weapon that could expose the full scope of his deception and lies. My mind raced, thinking about how the courtroom would react, how the judge would finally see the truth. The power of this footage was overwhelming, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a surge of hope mixed with anger. I knew I had to be strategic. Revealing it too soon could backfire. I spent the night planning, imagining the exact moment I would present it, the precise way to make sure it could not be ignored. Every detail mattered, the timing, the reactions, the impact. As I leaned back, a mix of adrenaline and determination surged through me. Gideon had spent months thinking he was untouchable, but now the situation had shifted completely. The tables were turning, and I was ready. This footage wasn't just about proving my innocence, it was about making sure he faced the consequences for every betrayal he had committed. The countdown to justice had begun, and I was in control for the first time. The day of the courtroom confrontation arrived, and my hands trembled as I stepped forward. I placed the USB into the judge's system and pressed play. Every eye in the room turned toward the screen as Gideon's actions unfolded, unfiltered and undeniable. Silence filled the air, heavy and suffocating. Gideon's confident mask began to crumble immediately. His face flushed, sweat forming on his brow. He opened his mouth, trying to explain, to twist the story, but his words faltered. Every excuse sounded weaker than the last. He tried to cry, to act pitiful, to appear remorseful, but the footage spoke louder than his lies. I could feel the energy shift in the room. Colleagues who once doubted me were leaning forward, watching intently. The judge's eyes widened slightly, a clear sign that the evidence was having its intended effect. I stayed calm, letting the clips play in full, allowing the truth to speak for itself. My heart pounded, but it wasn't fear, it was vindication. Every second on that screen stripped Gideon of the arrogance he had carried for so long. Every look, every threatening gesture he had made, was now undeniable proof. The courtroom was captivated. Murmurs turned to silence, disbelief evident on Gideon's face. I had anticipated this moment for weeks, but seeing it unfold in real time was overwhelming. The scales of justice had begun to tip in my favor, and there was no turning back. For the first time in this long nightmare, I felt a rush of empowerment. The betrayal, the fear, the doubt, they all seemed to fade. The truth was finally claiming its place, and I was finally free to watch justice take hold. The judge's gavel finally struck, and the words I had been longing to hear filled the courtroom. Every lie Gideon had spun collapsed under the weight of undeniable proof. The ruling was clear, everything was in my favor. A wave of relief washed over me, almost making me dizzy. Colleagues and acquaintances who had doubted me approached hesitantly, their expressions a mix of shame and regret. Apologies were whispered, hands were extended, and I could see the truth finally settling in their eyes. It felt strange, this recognition after so much disbelief, but I accepted it quietly, letting it wash over me. Gideon, on the other hand, sat in stunned silence. The evidence had stripped him bare, and now he faced real consequences. Charges of fraud, manipulation, and deceit loomed over him. There would be no shortcuts, no escape. Finally, he would have to answer for every scheme, every betrayal, and every moment he tried to destroy my life. Even in the aftermath, I felt a complicated mix of emotions. Relief, of course, I had won, and the nightmare that had haunted me for months was over. But anger lingered, subtle and stubborn, a reminder of what I had endured and how close I had come to losing everything. It was a quiet fire, one that would never fully go out. As I stepped out of the courtroom, I took a deep breath, letting the cool air fill me. Justice had been served, but more importantly, I had reclaimed my life. For the first time in months, I felt a strange calm, knowing that the truth had prevailed, and that the person who tried to destroy me was finally held accountable. After the courtroom battle, I focused on putting the pieces of my life back together. I opened a small consultancy, dedicated to guiding people who had been deceived or betrayed in their workplaces. Helping others navigate challenges similar to mine gave me a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. Through this process, I began to understand something important. Being betrayed doesn't mean I was weak, foolish, or incapable of judgment. It only meant that someone else had made poor choices. My identity, my worth, and my ability to trust were not defined by Gideon's actions. Slowly, I started to rebuild confidence and learn to trust myself again. I also watched, quietly, as Gideon's world unraveled. Without any interference from me, his reputation in the business community collapsed. Former associates distanced themselves, and opportunities disappeared. It was a subtle, almost poetic form of justice. He faced the consequences of his actions without me having to intervene. Even as life regained stability, the experience left its marks. I carried memories of the fear, frustration, and heartache with me, small scars that reminded me of how far I had come. Yet, those scars no longer hurt in the same way. Instead, they were proof that I survived, that I endured, and that I emerged stronger. For the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of freedom. The weight of betrayal had lifted, and the control I once thought was lost had returned. I could move forward with clarity, purpose, and resilience. Even though the past would always be a part of me, I finally felt free to create the future I deserved. Weeks after the courtroom ordeal, I met Ren, a kind and thoughtful person who became a steady presence in my life. At first, I was cautious, unsure if I could trust someone again. Slowly, with conversations, shared laughter, and quiet support, I began to feel that trust could be rebuilt, step by step. Through this experience, I realized that my fight hadn't been about revenge alone. Punishing Gideon was only a part of it. The real victory was reclaiming my life, my confidence, and my sense of self. I had survived betrayal, navigated pain, and emerged capable of making choices for myself once more. That understanding brought a quiet peace I hadn't expected. Life didn't return to normal overnight, and I still carried the lessons of what had happened. But I embraced each new day with determination, knowing that I had the strength to face challenges without letting fear or resentment control me. The scars remained, but they were reminders of resilience rather than defeat. I want anyone listening to take a moment to reflect on their own experiences. Betrayal can feel like the end, but it can also become the start of something stronger. Life can be rebuilt, trust can be restored, and hope can grow in unexpected ways. If you've ever been betrayed and fought back, share your story below, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like mine. Every tale of courage, endurance, and triumph deserves to be heard, and together, we can learn how to rise again, no matter what we've faced. Do you think I did the right thing by standing up to him, or should I have tried to forgive and move on? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe for more stories like mine.